Long ago, in a faraway desert land, there lived a powerful and proud nation. Their name was the people of Ad. They lived between tall mountains and endless sand. Their land was beautiful and full of life. They built huge buildings and tall towers that touched the sky. Their houses were made of strong stones, and their palaces were decorated with fine designs. They were not weak people. They were tall, strong, and very skilled. Their strength made other tribes fear them. People would talk about their power and greatness. They believed no one could defeat them. The people of Ad had everything they needed. They had water, gardens, and green fields in the middle of the desert. Their animals were healthy. Their farms gave them plenty of food. Their cities were full of laughter, trade, and celebrations. Life seemed perfect, but deep inside their hearts, something was wrong. They were proud. They started to believe that all their power and success came from themselves, not from Allah. They forgot the one who gave them everything. Instead of being thankful, they became arrogant. They built their towers to show their greatness, not to worship Allah. They wanted to prove they were the strongest people on earth. When they walked in the streets, they walked with pride. Their leaders spoke with arrogance. They thought they were smarter than anyone else. They said to each other, "Look at our buildings. Look at our strength. Who can ever be stronger than us?" They felt safe, like nothing bad could happen to them. They believed their walls and towers could protect them forever. They did not realize that no wall can stand against the power of Allah. As time passed, their hearts became harder. They forgot kindness and humility. They laughed at the idea of anyone being more powerful than them. They stopped worshiping Allah and started worshiping idols. They carved their idols from stone and wood and gave them names. They prayed to these statues and asked them for help. They believed these lifeless objects could protect them, but in reality the idols could not even protect themselves. The people of Ad turned away from the truth. They lived in comfort but ignored the purpose of their lives. Strange signs started to appear. Sometimes the wind would blow in a strange way. It would make a deep sound as it passed through their towers. The sky would darken without warning. The animals would act restless, as if they could sense something coming. Some people felt uneasy, but most of them ignored these signs. They were too busy enjoying their power and wealth. They told each other, "Nothing will happen to us. We are strong. We are safe." But deep in the desert, something was changing. It was quiet, but it was powerful. The desert nights became colder. The air felt different. Some elders whispered among themselves that these signs were not normal. They remembered stories from the past, stories about how nations that became arrogant were punished. But the leaders of Ad only laughed. They stood on top of their high towers and looked over their land with pride. They thought they ruled everything. One night, as the stars shined above, the wind blew stronger than usual. It moved through the streets like a whisper. It sounded almost like a warning. The people continued their celebrations, unaware that their time was slowly approaching. The darkness of the night covered their cities, and the desert stood silent, as if waiting for something. In the distance, a lone figure watched over the land. He knew what the people of Ad could not see. He knew that their power was not real power. He knew that without Allah, no nation can stand forever. This figure was a man chosen by Allah. Soon he would speak the truth to the people. Soon their story would take a turn they never expected. But for now, the people continued their proud lives, laughing and building, believing their greatness would last forever. Little did they know that their pride would lead them to a shocking end. Hud, A.S., was a man chosen by Allah to guide the people of Ad. He was not a stranger to them. He grew up among them. He knew their ways, their language, and their pride. He was known for his honesty and wisdom. People respected him before he became a prophet. He never lied, and he always spoke with kindness and strength. One day, Allah commanded him to call his people back to the truth. His heart was full of care for them. He loved his people and did not want them to face destruction. With courage and calmness, he stood before them and began to speak. "O my people," Hud, A.S. said, "worship Allah alone. You have no God but Him. He created you, gave you strength, and blessed you with everything you have. Do not turn away from Him." His voice echoed through the land. The people listened at first, surprised. Some were curious, some confused, and some laughed. Hud, A.S. reminded them that their towers and strength did not come from their hands. He told them it was Allah who gave them their power, their gardens, their water, and their safety. "Will you not remember?" he asked them. "Do not let pride blind you. Allah is more powerful than anything you have built." But the leaders of Ad did not like what they heard. Their faces changed. They whispered among themselves, then shouted loudly so all could hear. "Hud, have you lost your mind? We see nothing special in your message. Our fathers worshipped these gods for generations. Are you telling us they were wrong?" They laughed at him and mocked his words. One leader stepped forward and said, "We are strong, Hud. Look at our towers. Look at our men. Who is stronger than us? Who can harm us?" They spoke with confidence, but their hearts were full of arrogance. Hud, A.S., did not give up. Day after day, he walked among his people and reminded them gently. "I do not ask you for money or power," he said. "I only want to guide you so that Allah will forgive you and keep you safe." He warned them of the dangers of pride. He told them stories of nations before who were destroyed because they turned away from Allah. Some people began to think about his words. A few believed in him and followed him, but the majority refused. They loved their wealth and power too much. They were afraid to leave their idols because they thought it would make them weak. The more Hud, A.S. spoke, the more stubborn they became. They started to make jokes about him in their gatherings. "Here comes Hud again with his warnings," they would say, laughing loudly. When he spoke in the marketplace, some people would cover their ears and walk away. Others would shout to silence him. But Hud, A.S., remained patient. His eyes showed no anger, only sadness for his people. He knew the truth, and he wanted to save them, even if they insulted him. One day he stood before the largest crowd and said with a strong voice, "O my people, why do you not fear Allah? He gave you life and strength. Do not challenge him with your arrogance. Worship him alone and obey him. If you do, he will forgive you and increase your blessings. But if you continue to reject him, a punishment will come that no tower can protect you from." His words were clear and full of truth. But the leaders only waved their hands and said, "Bring the punishment you talk about if you are telling the truth." "We do not believe you." Hud, A.S., looked at them with calm eyes. He knew they were testing Allah's power, not his. He told them, "Allah's punishment will come when he decides. You cannot stop it. You cannot escape it." His voice was steady, but the people only laughed louder. They thought nothing could happen to them. They returned to their celebrations and their idols, leaving Hud, A.S., standing alone in the hot desert sun. He raised his hands to the sky and asked Allah to guide them, but deep down, he knew that their hearts were growing harder with every passing day. The story of their arrogance was only beginning. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, but the people of Ad continued in their stubborn ways. Hud, A.S., kept calling them with patience, but their hearts were covered with pride. Whenever he spoke, they turned their faces away as if his words were nothing but dust carried by the wind. He reminded them gently and warned them clearly, but their arrogance grew stronger each day. Some of them began to challenge him openly. "Hud," they said, "we do not understand your warnings. You talk about a punishment, but we see nothing. The sun still shines, our gardens still grow, and our towers still stand tall. Your words are empty." Their voices were filled with mockery, and the people around them laughed. Hud, A.S., remained calm, but his heart ached for them. He told them, "Do not be fooled by the delay. Allah gives time, but he never forgets. If you do not change, the day will come when you will face his power." But they only shook their heads. They loved their life too much to give up their false gods. They were used to the comfort of their fields, the beauty of their buildings, and the praise of their neighbors. They thought nothing could ever change. Even when the wind began to behave strangely and the air carried an unusual chill, they ignored it. They told each other that Hud was just trying to scare them. Their leaders stood before the people and shouted with confidence, "Look around you! Do you see any danger? Do you see any punishment? Hud is just a man like us. His words are stories made to frighten children. Our gods have protected us for generations, and they will protect us again." The crowd cheered. Their laughter filled the streets. They started to insult Hud, A.S., even more. Some of them said he was possessed. Others claimed he was lying to gain power. Hud, A.S., never raised his voice in anger. He spoke with the same firmness as always. I am not mad, he told them. I am a messenger sent to warn you before it is too late. A few people among them began to wonder if Hud's words might be true. They noticed the way the sky sometimes turned a strange color. They felt how the air shifted at night, becoming colder and sharper than before. They saw animals acting in ways they had never seen, but fear of their leaders kept them silent. They did not want to be mocked like Hud. They stayed quiet, hoping things would return to normal. But normal was slowly slipping away. Hud A.S. warned them again. He stood in their gathering places and spoke with passion. "O my people, I wish nothing but good for you. I fear that if you continue this path, a punishment will come that you cannot imagine. Your towers will not save you. Your idols will not speak. Turn to Allah before it is too late." His words carried a weight that shook some hearts, but most people just crossed their arms and laughed. One man shouted from the crowd, "If what you say is true, then bring this punishment you talk about." "We are not afraid." Hud A.S. looked at him and replied, "I cannot bring it. Only Allah can. When He decides, no one will be able to stop it." His voice was steady, but his warning echoed like thunder in the silence that followed. For a moment, the crowd was quiet. Then the laughter returned, louder than before. They thought their strength made them untouchable. They believed their history of power meant their future was safe. Nights grew stranger. The wind began to hum through the towers, creating sounds that unsettled the animals. Some people woke up in the middle of the night feeling uneasy but not knowing why. The air seemed heavier, as if the land itself was waiting. Hud A.S. watched his people with a heavy heart. He knew the signs. He knew that when arrogance reaches its peak and warnings are ignored again and again, the next step is always the same. A day would come when their laughter would disappear, replaced by fear they could not escape. But they continued in their pride, unaware that the storm was already forming beyond the horizon. The sky changed one morning in a way no one had ever seen before. A dark cloud appeared far on the horizon. It was thick and heavy, rolling slowly toward the land of Ad. The people gathered outside their towers, pointing at it with excitement. "Finally," they said, "rain is coming. Our fields will grow, and our lands will become even greener." They celebrated as the cloud drew nearer, unaware that this was not a cloud of mercy, but a sign of something far greater and more terrifying. Hud A.S. saw it too, but his face was not filled with joy. He knew exactly what this cloud carried. His voice rose above the noise of the crowd, warning them, "This is not a cloud of blessings. This is the punishment you asked for. Turn to Allah before it reaches you." But no one listened. They laughed at him once again, waving their hands as if brushing away his words like dust. Then the first gust of wind came. It was different from any wind they had ever felt. It was sharp, cold, and full of power. It swept through the streets, lifting sand into the air. People covered their faces, surprised, but still they did not understand. The wind grew stronger with every passing moment. It howled through their towers, bending trees and shaking doors. At first, the people shouted to each other to close their homes and stay inside, but the wind did not stop. It kept rising, louder and fiercer, as if the entire desert had come alive. By nightfall, the storm had fully arrived. The wind roared like a wild beast, tearing through their mighty buildings. Their strong walls began to crack. Their tall towers swayed like thin branches. People tried to hold on to anything they could find, but the storm showed no mercy. It lifted some high into the air and threw them down with a force they had never imagined. Their voices, once full of pride and laughter, turned into cries of fear. The same towers they had built to show their strength were now collapsing around them like fragile toys. The ground trembled under the force of the storm. For 7 nights and 8 days, the wind raged without rest. It tore apart everything in its path. The people of Ad tried to hide in their strong homes, but the storm broke through their doors and shattered their roofs. It chased them across the desert, lifting their heavy bodies as if they were dry leaves. It twisted trees out of the ground and sent sand swirling through the air so thick that day felt like night. Their gardens were destroyed, their animals scattered, and their great city turned into chaos. The same people who once shouted, "Who is stronger than us?" now screamed for help, but no help came. Hud A.S. And those who believed in Allah were protected. While the wind roared outside, they stayed safe under Allah's mercy. Hud, A.S., watched the destruction with a heart full of sadness. He had warned his people again and again, but they had chosen arrogance over truth. Now the punishment they demanded with their own words had arrived. There was no escape. The wind showed no weakness. It crushed their pride, their towers, and their idols all at once. The storm did not slow down until every trace of their arrogance was gone. When it finally ended, silence filled the land. The mighty nation of Ad was no more. Their once great towers lay in ruins. Their fields were buried under endless sand. Their voices had disappeared, leaving only the sound of the wind whispering through the empty desert. No one remained to boast about strength. No one remained to challenge the truth. The punishment they thought would never come had arrived with a power beyond imagination. The land that once shone with their pride now stood quiet and broken, a reminder of how quickly strength turns to dust when Allah's warning is ignored. When the storm finally passed, the land of Ad no longer looked the same. What had once been full of life, gardens, and powerful towers was now silent and covered in sand. The sky was clear, but the air was still, as if the entire desert was holding its breath. The once proud people who filled the streets with laughter and arrogance were gone. Their voices had vanished. Their mighty buildings, which they believed would stand forever, were nothing but broken stones buried beneath dunes. The nation that thought it could never be defeated had been erased in a way no one could have imagined. Hud, A.S., and the believers stepped out from their place of safety. Their hearts were heavy as they looked around. They had witnessed the power of Allah with their own eyes. Every corner of the land told the same story. Pride had met its end. Hud, A.S., had spent years warning his people, calling them with patience and kindness. But they had chosen to ignore every sign. Now their story stood before him not in words, but in ruins. The once strong people of Ad had disappeared, leaving behind no leaders, no celebrations, no noise, only silence and lessons carved into the sand. The ruins of their towers were a clear reminder to anyone who saw them. They were not destroyed by an enemy army or by a human hand. It was the wind, something invisible, that turned their strength into nothing. The same wind they once ignored became their end. Their wealth, their power, their idols, and their pride could not protect them for even a moment. No wall could stop what was written for them. Their story was not forgotten, because Allah made it a lesson for every nation that would come after them. Hud, A.S., stood among the ruins, his heart calm but reflective. He had done his duty. He had delivered the message. He had warned them, guided them, and prayed for them. He was not responsible for their choice, only for delivering the truth. He and his followers thanked Allah for his protection. They knew that obedience and faith, not pride and strength, had saved them. They understood that no matter how powerful a nation becomes, it cannot stand against the will of Allah. Their survival was a mercy, and their hearts were filled with gratitude. The land that once belonged to Ad became empty and quiet. Travelers who passed through would see the broken remains of towers rising from the sand and wonder about the people who once lived there. Stories spread far and wide about a great nation that thought it was unstoppable, but was destroyed by the very thing it ignored. People would tell their children about the mighty Ad, about how they laughed at warnings and challenged the truth, and about how a single storm erased their arrogance in days. The story of Hud, A.S., and his people became more than history. It became a reminder that power without humility leads to destruction, that arrogance blinds the heart, and that ignoring the truth has consequences. Generations after would hear this story and remember that strength comes from Allah alone. It is not in buildings, wealth, or armies, but in faith and obedience. Those who listen to the truth find safety, and those who turn away face the reality they once denied. As Hud, A.S., and his followers moved on from the land of Ad, the desert slowly covered the last traces of the nation beneath its shifting sands. Time moved forward, but their story remained. It lived on through the words of those who believed, through the lessons passed down from one generation to the next. And so the story of Ad stands as a silent voice through history, reminding every listener, arrogance ends in silence, but faith leads to mercy.